it's Rachel and welcome to Hope Corner Farm. By day, I'm a home ec teacher who teaches hundreds of students how to sew, quilt, cook, and crochet. So I invite you to come along this journey as we learn how to sew. So to begin, you have to have the proper tools, techniques, and tips in order to pin properly, because that's what we're going to learn how to do today. We're going to learn how to pin. Pinning is something that my 7th graders tend to struggle with and be intimidated by at first, but it really doesn't take long for them to get the hang of it, and before you know it, they're pinning like pros. So to begin, let's start talking about the tools we need. In front of me, I have a whole bunch of different pinning/clipping tools that I use when I'm sewing, and I'm going to talk about each of these right now. So first off is this magnetic pin dish. This thing is my favorite. This keeps all your pins organized and together. And if you notice, I can turn it upside down and my pins aren't going to fall off. And if I have pins that have spilt on the floor or the table, it is simple as sweeping over top of them to pick up all those pins. I love this when I'm working with new sewers. I love this for myself, so just kind of keep that in mind. You can also have a regular tomato pin cushion or a tomato with an emery attached as well, or you can simply keep your pins in a little box. That works too. So whatever method you choose, use what works best for you. So when I'm talking about these, my favorite types of pins are these flat-headed flower pins. I like these because there's a lot of area to hold onto. It doesn't put a lot of pressure on your fingers as you're pushing it through the fabric and the pattern, and these are longer pins as well. You could also use a smaller glass-headed pin. Again, you've got a little more surface area for your fingers to have some padding with, but these are a little bit shorter. You could also come across a quilter's pin. Again, it's got that length, a little bit bigger of a plastic head to it. You can come across some that are a little bit shorter. There really is such a wide variety of the types of pins out there. In this box here, I have what we call dressmaker pins. Now these are a little more specific. I honestly would not recommend starting out with these unless you're planning on sewing with some really delicate material like satin or silk. These are meant for those more delicate materials because they're sharper and thinner, and they go through satin and silk without leaving a mark. But the drawback to these is this small surface area on the top of the pin. That kind of hurts if you're trying to go through a thicker fabric. And trust me, my 7th graders have tried using these before, and their fingers are hurting from trying to press on that little tiny head space by the end of the class. So these really are meant for when you're sewing something like a wedding dress or a prom dress, which I've done before. A little bit crazy, but yeah. So keep that in mind. Now with the emery here on top of this little tomato, you can use this to sharpen your pins, and it quite literally is as simple as just running your pin back and forth in that a few times, and that should help to sharpen your pin. So that's what that little strawberry is actually for, and it's called an emery. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about before I bring you in closer and show you my tips on how to pin are these clips. These clips have kind of been a game changer in my classroom as well, because it reduces, not eliminates, the amount of time and that my kids have to spend with pins. Why? Because you can clip things that you have to hold in place, like hems or things like that, and not have to use your pins, which can poke you. I always warn my 7th graders, yeah, they can and they will poke you, so you do have to be careful when you're using pins. So now that we know about our types of tools that we're going to use for pinning, I'm going to stop here, pause for a second, and bring you in closer to show you how to pin a pattern piece on and how to pin hems and all of that kind of fun stuff. So while I'm bringing you in closer, make sure you put in the comments below, yes, this is making sense to you, or no, you need some clarification, and let me know what you need clarification on, and I can address those in another video. So let me bring you in closer. Okay, so I brought you in closer so you can see how to pin a pattern piece onto some fabric. One of the first projects that my 7th graders make is an apron, and they have to pin paper pieces onto fabric in order to cut things out. So what we need to do here is make sure first off that our pins are right nearby, that we've got our pattern pieces laid out how they need to be laid out, and we've got our fabric. Again, all of this is on a hard, flat surface. You do not want to be on something soft to pin, otherwise you're going to just catch that soft stuff up in the pin as well. So let's get started here with this. So in order to pin It really is kind of a simple movement. I take my left hand and I'm kind of going to hold this pattern piece in place. One of the first pins that I make usually is right in the middle of that pattern piece to kind of hold it in place so it doesn't move around. For more instructions on how to pin and cut out pattern pieces, I'm going to make a video for that a little bit later on too, so keep checking on back for that video. So anyways, to pin, I literally take my pin, I'm holding it with my middle finger and my thumb. I take my ring finger and my pinky finger and I lean them against the fabric and the paper here. Now I take my pin and I'm putting it at a downward angle and I push through until I feel the table or the cutting board or whatever it is that I'm using back here. You will feel it when you hit that hard flat surface. Once you do that, you're going to move your hand around here, your left hand around here, over to the side. We don't want it in front of where that pin's going to come out, otherwise you're going to poke yourself. So we move it right over here to the side next to it. And what we're going to do is we're going to lift up with that pin, and you can look, if you look closely, you can see where that pin's going to come through, and keep your left hand out of the way. So you're going to lift and then just push through, and you might have to use your index finger to kind of help get that tip of the needle to come out on top of the paper. You want the tip of the needle to come out at the end on top of the paper. Otherwise, you could end up with some pieces of that sharp part, on the underside, and when you're cutting, you can poke yourself. So we don't want to do that. So there's my first pin. So I'm going to come over here, and again, I'm going to push down until I feel that table. I'm going to lift up. I'm going to kind of create a pooch here, and I'm just going to push straight through and then kind of lay it flat. So let me show you another one. Now, as you're placing more pins, you do have to be aware of where the points of the pins are from the previous pins, so that way you don't poke yourself there as well. So again, you're going to push down until you feel the table or the cutting board or whatever. You're going to lift up. You're going to move your left hand over to the side so it doesn't get poked by that pin, and then just push straight forward. I'll show you one more time here down at the bottom. I'm going to push until I feel the table. I'm going to lift up, move my left hand over here to the side, and then push the pin through. We'll do one more side here. If I were to cut this out, this is how I would pin it. I would have at least one pin on each side. And then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to push through, lift up, and then push straight forward. So that is how you pin a pattern piece onto a piece of fabric in order to cut out. So then you'd take your scissors and you would cut right next to the pattern piece all the way around there. So hopefully that makes sense. Now I'm going to get set up and I'm going to show you how to pin a seam together here in just a second. So sometimes you have to pin or clip a seam together to sew it. So let me show you guys how to do this movement. So to begin, let's start with pinning it while it's still on a flat, hard surface. If you have a project that allows you to lay it flat, this is a great choice. It is the same movement basically that you used when you pinned the pattern down, just a little bit different hold with your left hand. So I take my left hand, because again, I'm right-handed, and I kind of create a V here with my index and my middle finger. I'll move this up so you can see it a little better. I've got a nice little V here. Now with my right hand, I'm going to take my pin and I'm going to push down till I feel the hard surface, lift up, and carefully push through. Let's go to the next one. Again, I create a V, I push down, I lift up, I push through. And we'll do one more here. I push down, I lift up, I push through. So that's how you pin when you're laying on a flat surface. Now, when I hold it, it's a little bit different of a movement. So to do this, I grasp it with my left hand, I kind of pinch it, so I hold that seam together so it's nice and even. Now I'm going to grab a pin with my right hand. Now I take my ring finger and the joint of my thumb, and I'm going to grasp here and kind of pull it tight so that my fabric doesn't move around and it gives me a nice surface to push through. And I take my pin and I literally just go down and up, and I kind of go, so here's a little bit closer, down, rotate, up. Let's do another one. Now when I place additional pins, I do have to be careful of where I put my right hand so I don't poke myself with that pin tip. So I will grasp here with this kind of bottom part of my thumb and my ring finger up here on top. Notice I am nowhere close to that tip of the needle or the pin, so that way I don't poke myself. And then my left hand helps to pull this tight. And again, with my middle, my index and my thumb, I push down and I push forward. And I'll show you one more time here. So I'm grasping here, and I push down, lift up, push forward. So there is pinning a seam together. Now let me show you how to use clips, because I have really become a fan of using clips anytime I can. So same idea, you can pin it when it's flat on the surface. So I can just take my clips, open it up, clip them together, and I take my pins, I open it up, clip them together, and I take my clip and I open it up and clip it together. So that's how you would clip it if it's laying flat. Now if I bring it up here and I hold it, again, same movement. I'm going to hold with my left hand. I'm going to take my clip, and again I'm going to grasp with ring and the bottom of my heel of my thumb here, and then I'm going to clip it, push it open with my middle and my thumb, and I'm just going to place my clip. So then we'll go on to the next one, and we're just going to open it, place the clip. It might take some practice. Everything worth doing takes some practice. This is what I always tell my 7th graders. So open it up and place the clip. And so there are clips on a seam allowance. I love using clips. I'm just going to tell you this right now. So now I'm going to show you how to pin and how to clip a hem before I let you go. So give me a second to get set up for that. So the last thing I'm going to show you today is how to pin or clip a hem. We have to usually pin these down even though we've ironed them into place, because they do like to flip up, and you really want to make sure that your hem is nice and flat when you go to sew it. So just like we did when we pinned a seam together, we can pin it flat on the table. If you have a hem that is able to lay flat, you can totally do this. So again, we're creating our V, we're taking our pin, we're pushing till we feel the table, we lift up and we push through. Now, one of the key things you need to keep in mind is that when you pin, the pin is entirely on that hem, that rolled over piece. We don't want it coming out anywhere out here, otherwise that can still flip up on you. So you really want to make sure the pin's all the way on the hem. So we'll move on to the next one here. So we're going to push through, we're going to lift up, push through. And we'll do one more. Push through, lift up, push through. So again, you can push them so they lay nice and flat. So you can do it that way, or you can hold it just like I did when I put the 2 pieces of fabric together. So it's the same kind of idea. You're gonna hold on with your left hand, and then with your right hand, when you start, you're gonna hold with your ring and the joint of your thumb, and you're gonna push that pin in and push that pin through. And then as you go on to the next one, you're going to, sorry, having trouble getting pins there. Hold with the heel of your thumb and your ring finger, and you're going to push through, push through. We'll go on to the next one. We're holding on here with the heel and the ring finger, and then I've got the pin with my middle index and my thumb, and again, I'm just going to push straight down, lift up, push forward, just like I have done with other pinning movements. So the pinning is really the same movement, just maybe done being held differently or laying differently. Now, I will tell you anymore, I like to use these clips because again, you don't have these sharp pins that can scrape you as you're sewing. So literally these clips, I just take and I place them right there, holding that in place. Clip, hold it in place, and clip, hold it in place. So super easy to use these guys. And then to take them off, you just pinch them, pinch them, pinch them. One hint, I never sew over pins anymore. I almost took a needle to the eye when it broke on a pin once, and if I hadn't been wearing my glasses, I probably would have had an eye injury. So I pull my pins out before I sew over them, and you do have to pull clips out before you sew over them. Now if you're holding, it's just the same kind of a grasping movement with your right hand here, and then you just clip. And we're gonna clip. And we're gonna hold here and clip. So there are clips on a hem.